Hello and welcome to another bearing removal and replacement video featuring Boca bearings. The subject of today's bearing removal and replacement is from a manufacturer that's been one of my favorites for many years, and that would be Saito engines. The particular one in question today was given to me by a really good friend Garrett, and it is a Saito FA-50 engine. Now the Saito FA-50 came out in 1993, and then the 56 came out in 1997. So I'm not entirely sure how long the production life was for the 50, if it extended beyond when the 56 came out. But this is a beautiful example of Saito engineering. And what I'm going to do is, I've got the engine on the table here in its completely assembled state, basically just as it came out of the box that Garrett sent it to me. I'm just going to do a quick show and tell of this engine in its current state, and then I'm going to shoot a separate video for doing disassembly. And then I'll come back to this and we will replace the bearings in it. Okay, so here is this beautiful Saito FA-50 engine that Garrett sent to me. Now it's missing the prop washer and the official prop nut that came with the engine, but it has this Higley heavy hub on it, which will be more than adequate for my needs. But I mean, this engine looks to be in really good shape. It doesn't have a glow plug in it at this moment, but when I put a plug in it, this had incredibly strong compression. You can see it's a little dirty, so we're going to get this thing all disassembled and cleaned up and ready to have some bearings installed. Now here's the exhaust, and this would be the stock exhaust that came with the 50 engines and maybe even the 56. I don't know. You can see there's quite a bit of burnt on fuel residue on there, and I anticipate being able to get this looking almost brand new in the ultrasonic cleaner. So with all that said, I'm going to shut this video off and I'm going to do a disassembly video of this engine, and then we'll come back and we'll do some bearing replacements. Okay, so the Saito FA-50 engine disassembly went very well. I've got it all disassembled and ready to extract the bearings for the bearing replacement. Now, one of the things I want to note about this particular vintage engine is that this is the FA-50, came out in 1993, and to my knowledge, I believe this is the last version of the engine that they created that had the pinion gear, or the gear that engages in the camshaft timing wheel, as a separate ring piece and not actually integrated into the cut into the crankshaft itself. So what I'm going to have here is, when I tap this crankshaft out, this gear in here is actually going to come off with it, and there is also a spacer, a metal spacer that goes between that and the bearing, the front bearing, the rear end of the front bearing. So that is going to be an interesting thing. So let's just go ahead and get this thing heated up and get this crankshaft out, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about here. Is my heat gun not plugged in? Hopefully that'll be enough. So as I said, you should see 2 additional parts come out of this when I get this crankshaft out, in addition to, yeah, boy, that came out really easy. So if I recall correctly, I do believe Garrett ran this engine. So let's see here. So here's our crankshaft, and the 2 other parts that are still in here are still in here. And that's going to be one of those things where now I have to see if I can. There's a timing gear. I just have to finagle those things out, and the other spacer is right here. So those are the other 2 pieces that actually go on there. So future iterations of the Saito engine actually had the timing gear teeth cut into the shaft. So they effectively eliminated 2 pieces there by doing a machining part, actually 3 pieces, because this timing wheel or gear is actually held and pinned in place using a roll pin inserted into the crank pin or the crankshaft itself. So they did some cost reductions there, and probably longevity. So you can see this crankshaft is going to need to be cleaned up pretty good here. So let's go ahead and pop this front bearing out. This isn't all that hot, but it should come out just fine. There we go. So there's our front bearing. Now this bearing is interesting because it's a metal shielded bearing, and it's got the shields on both sides. So it's interesting because this actually looks like a Boca bearing. And I just say that just because of the fact that this has got the clip in there. This isn't just the ZZ type where you can just punch in there and pull that apart. I see a clip that's retaining that, so I guess that's what I get to look forward to doing when I get to the bearing reveal here. So I don't know, I might be able to just tap this thing out just like using this guy. This punch should be just fine. Let's get on here. And there is our rear bearing, completely open on both sides. Pretty dirty, but actually doesn't feel too bad. So I'll have to ask Garrett if he actually replaced bearings in this engine, because that front one looks to me like a Boca bearing. So now I'm just going to go and do some cleanup here of this crankcase and the crank pin or crankshaft, and then we'll be able to install a new set of Boca bearings. Okay, so I'm ready to conclude this video by installing a new set of bearings into this Saito FA-50 engine. So I've got the crankcase all nice and cleaned up. It came clean very well, and I am of the opinion now, of course, here's the crankshaft. I just cleaned this up by hand as opposed to using the brass bristle brush on the grinder downstairs. But I have come to the belief that this was a recently refurbished engine. There were several things that told me that, and one of the things that told me that, I threw these original bearings in my ultrasonic cleaner just for the heck of it to clean them up, and they feel really nice. Despite what the outside appearance of this engine looked like, these bearings actually feel really nice, and I don't know for sure, but I'm fairly convinced that this is actually a set of Boca bearings that came out of this. And we'll kind of take a look at that right here. So the reassembly or bearing installation of this is going to be a little bit different than normal. And before I say anything more about that, let me just say that I always have my bottle of Lightning Lube Road Power from Boca here that I use as my reassembly lubricant. And I'm going to start lubricating some parts up here too. But getting back to how this is going to be a little bit more interesting than before is that in the last segment, I said that the timing gear, and I've also cleaned this timing gear up. There's a timing gear and a spacer that goes on here. So there's going to be a little bit of assembly work that goes on with this as well. So with all that said, let me talk about the Boca bearing set of bearings that came here, the kit, and then we'll get to lubricating parts and put some bearings in. So this kit number from the Boca site for this particular engine is an ENK-075. And as I suspected from looking at this front bearing, maybe it's just because of the size of the bearing that predicates the type of shield, but this does have a little clip on there as opposed to a seal or a shield, metal shield that looks like this. And you'll be able to tell the difference because the metal shield that you just poke in and remove with a screwdriver, you'll see there's all these different little holes around there, or gaps. But on one of these, it's fully, you don't see those kinds of things, and if you look real close, then you can see the little clip there. So first thing I'm going to do before I do any lubrication here at all is I'm going to prep these bearings. So to get this little clip out of this front bearing, I usually just use a T-pin, and hoping I can make this look really easy. And the fact is that it's not always easy just because of the size. of these things. Okay, so I got this one out on this side. So the reason this is difficult sometimes is because this is probably going to be almost impossible for you to see. But when they cut this little ring to put in there, they cut it at an angle. So when you're looking at the bearing, you either have this side of the ring to try to, which is the side you need to stick your pin in to try to lift it out. Or if you're trying to go in at this side, when you try to stick that pin in there, it's constantly doing this and you can't really get under it, so you have to find the side. So depending on how they orient this piece in there is depending on which side you can get in, and that was what was making this one a little bit more challenging at that time. And that also makes me wonder about, what I'm wondering about now is, where did this come from? I don't think that goes on the crankshaft. That's an interesting little piece of metal I just found. I'll have to review the video to see if I can figure out where that came from. Where was the bearing that I just removed the clip from? There it is. So I just use a magnet then to pop that out. So the thing that's interesting about this is that whoever, if this is a bearing, if this is a Boca bearing, which I believe it is, whomever put this bearing in did not remove that clip or that seal or that shield, maybe because they didn't know that they could do that. So I'm going to put these original bearings aside, as with this little inner ring, and go ahead and get this metal shields out of this one here. Okay, so these bearings are ready to be installed. So now, let me put this strange little metal piece off to the side. I'm going to go ahead and lubricate all the surfaces that are going to get these bearings and anything else I can touch in there. Ready to accept a new set of bearings. Okay, so the order of operations here is going to be put this rear bearing on first, like I always do. I always put it on the crankshaft first, but the assembly order of operations is get this rear bearing on here first, like that. Okay, that'll get seated fully when it gets in the crankcase. Now put this gear on and align that pin, that roll pin, with the groove in there, and then we'll do this. This is the stack up. So now that's the whole sub-assembly that we'll be putting in here once I get this front bearing installed. So now I just need to wipe my hands, put a glove on, and heat this case up and get these bearings in. Yeah, that's definitely warm enough here. So ball side down, shield side out. There we go. Now, I don't think I put any oil on the outside of that. Let's do that real quick and drop this into place here. So now that stack up is correct. Now I can just tap this bearing in place. And despite that being hot, a little warm, there you go. Now we've got a fresh set of Boca bearings, certified for sure, in this Saito FA-50 engine, and I can finish the reassembly now.